What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. I do want to dive into one guy that is just zoned in right now, and that would be Howie Roseman. This guy, there's just no one like him in the NFL. I tried to figure out how many trades he has made this calendar year, but he had made so many different transactions, I couldn't even keep track. But just to give you an example of Howie Roseman in 2025, he just traded today for Jalen Phillips, gave up a third rounder, the pass rusher from Miami that Fangio had worked with a couple years ago, and I think he had like 6.5 or 7 sacks that year. Obviously, Vic would be on board with it, but the Eagles need pass rush. They just convinced Brandon Graham to come out of retirement. They trade for him. How he treats football like GMs treat baseball teams, right? Most GMs in the NFL do not operate this way. Now, is it because their coaches aren't huge believers in constant change? Is it because they don't have the cojones? Is it because their owner limits their ability to trade assets? I don't know. But Howie, who has more juice than any other GM in the entire NFL, is constantly trading and upgrading his team. And if you're a fan, you can't ask for anything more. They signed in March this year during free agency, a couple days after the start. They signed tight end Harrison Bryant. In August, they trade Bryant to the Houston Texans for John Mechie. Earlier last week, they traded Mechie for Carter, the DB from the Jets that Joe Douglas once drafted, on top of trading for Jair Alexander all last week. And then today they trade for Jalen Phillips. He is just constantly making moves. It is never tolerated like, we're good. They do not think like that. How can we upgrade? What do we have to do? And they're just coming off a Super Bowl. It would be easy to be like, it might not be our year. We're already paying a lot of money. Let's just see what happens. And this gets back to the expectation and the standard that's set by the owner, because he's the one that greenlights all of this. So when you see a lot of these other teams unwilling to ever do anything or not making moves when they should, it's an organizational philosophy. And Howie has been empowered. And here's the other thing. Howie doesn't have to, he has to work with the coaching staff, right? Obviously, like Nick and the coordinators. But at the end of the day, he's the boss when it comes to the roster. That is not the case for most of these teams. Like John Lynch just can't do that, right? Les Snead just can't do that, especially in the middle of the season. If their coaches say, no, I'm not really feeling that, it's not going to happen, even if it would be the right move. Because personnel people aren't as emotional about stuff. They're actually not as close, even though, especially when you work in the office, you're there on the daily grind. You're there early, they're staying late, at practice, in the cafeteria with everybody. You're helping, working hand in hand with everybody during the season. But there is, because you're not on a daily basis in the meeting rooms, there is almost a detachment from the players that can be healthy and help you see the big picture, where it's hard. If you're a position coach, your relationship with an individual is just different. And sometimes they can be too close to the sun to go, yeah, we should probably cut this guy. Or this guy isn't good enough. This is not going to work out. Because that is always being asked in Philadelphia. And think about this. When you watch Jerry Jones today, roaming around that sideline 20 minutes before the game, taking selfies, hanging out with Stephen A. Smith, that's their Howie Roseman. So how is Jerry Jones, who's a great businessman, and I'm sure if you want, to strike oil and get some of those things in the ground and have one of those bad boys hits, you would want Jerry to be the guy. But if I'm building a football team, if I'm making moves, I mean, we've talked about this for the last couple of years with Jerry. It's like, Jerry, remember a couple of years ago, he's like, we're going to make a big move, and then nothing happened. So he's competing against Howie Roseman. That's his competition. Like think of the advantage Jeffrey Lurie has. He's not doing any of that. Yet that Jerry has to sign off on everything because he's the general manager. And he's adamant, I'm never giving that up. Think of the disadvantage the Cowboys are at. That ever since Jeffrey Lurie has inserted Howie into full power once he kicked Chip Kelly to the curb, they've been to 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them, and have a team that's going to be right back in the mix in 2025 and definitely beyond because that's how they operate. And the Cowboys just never quite know what to do. A couple years ago, they're giving CD and Dak unlimited money. This year, they trade Micah Parsons. And I'm not against any of these moves in a vacuum. I think they gave Dak a little too much money, but regardless, I just don't think they view the team building prospect or process and just the philosophical belief and the ability to adapt and always be changing. The Eagles have such a big advantage. Such a big advantage. I see it right now. 15 years ago, the San Francisco Giants were about to rattle off 3 out of 5 World Series. And 15 years later, they don't have a snowball's chance in hell because they're fucking with the Dodgers. I love Buster Posey. He's one of my favorite players ever. How is he supposed to compete with Andrew Friedman and that bankroll? Hint, he can't. It's not a fair fight. Just like the Cowboys versus the Eagles in 2027 present. It's just not a fair fight. And it starts with Howie. If you're as competitive as I am, you're always looking for something to help you stay dialed in. And for me, that thing is Zone nicotine pouches. You won't catch me without one, a can. I'm actually out. I need to go tomorrow to the Chevron right down right down the street. And my go-to is usually dragon fruit or citrus, especially when I'm playing golf. Not to mention 20 pouches per can versus 15 that the other guys offer. So choose Zone and dominate the day. Use the promo code 3and out20 on NicoKick.com for 20% off at checkout. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Underage sale prohibited. You know, this trade deadline, which if you're listening to this in the afternoon, is probably already passed. I think you have to be very honest with yourself, right? How good you are. Because there are always going to be trades like if you are willing to give up a high enough pick, you can pull off a lot of players in the NFL. Right? But if you give a second round pick and then all of a sudden you miss that 7 seed and that pick is pick 17, well, now that's a pretty high second round pick. You know, the Washington Commanders are a good example. I commended Adam Peters for doing this because there weren't a lot of good players in free agency. And he didn't want to use his free agency money, which he had a lot of, to overpay guys because that's what you have to do in free agency. So he used draft capital to buy guys that were already under contract. Like Deebo Samuel, $15 million, 5th round pick. Laramie Tunsil, I get my starting left tackle. I give up a 3rd in 2025. He gave up a 2nd in 2026, which obviously you got to pay a lot for starting left tackle, who's a good player, and a pick in a year. Like if I trade you a 2026 second round pick in February of 2025, that pick is valued less because it's a year away. So on the value chart, it's typically a round lower, right? Like if I give you a 3rd round pick in a couple years, I don't view that as the same as a 3rd round pick now. It's like time value money. The problem for Washington is if you win 4 or 5 games, which is clearly on the table after some of their injuries and obviously Jaden being out for who knows, maybe the rest of the season, that pick could be like pick 37. And at the time when you pull those off, you just pray you're not in those situations. But sometimes you are. It's like when they traded for Matt Stafford and had to give up some 1st round picks. And then a year later, they had a bunch of injuries, and that pick was a top 10 pick. And the Detroit Lions were able to use that to get guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. Right? Sometimes when you get a high pick, ask Seattle, and that team sucks, like the Denver Broncos, you get Devin Witherspoon at pick 5. So, and it's the same with like giving up a 2nd round pick. Well, if you suck, that 2nd round pick, instead of being pick 50, is now pick 36. And Google some of the guys that go in the 30s. Sometimes it's Hall of Famers. You get high-end starters there. So it's really, really risky. And I think a lot of people go back and forth. And that's where I think Howie, once you've won a couple Super Bowls, Belichick got to the point where it's like he didn't care. He just did it for a long time when he had Brady. Most stuff kind of worked. And if it didn't work, whatever. We just pivoted. Howie's kind of in that mold too. It's like the equity speaks for itself. Just won the Super Bowl. Won one in 2017. We went to another one a couple years ago. Like I've proven I know what I'm doing. It's football. These are human beings. I'm gonna miss on some, but we're gonna make full speed fucking decisions. Some people throughout the league like don't have the equity to just give up a second and third round pick because if it does blow up in their face, then their ass is on the chopping block. How he's not thinking about like job security doesn't even cross his mind when he's just literally doing whatever it takes to try to help the team become better. That's what Bill did for 2 decades. And that enables you to actually operate from a position of strength. Because if you have conviction, you're like, yeah, I'll pay for that. We need this. Where I think it's easier for other people to talk yourself out of it. It's like, well, I might need that second round pick. And if this blows up in my face, I'm going to look like an idiot and the fans will be on me. And who knows, maybe I won't get a contract extension in 2 years. So I think one thing's going to be fascinating is like, does any player go for a second round pick? Because if we get a guy of that level, that would be pretty eye opening. I would guess no. Jalen Phillips for a third round pick feels right about the line. Every once in a while, though, you get like Christian McCaffrey's been traded for a second, a third, and a fourth round pick, right? If tomorrow someone's traded for Jalen Waddle, they gave up a second round pick, which I think sometimes with wide receivers, you're like, well, we would like him. He's under contract, but couldn't I find a guy in the draft in the second round who can do that for way cheaper? And I think these are the conversations you're constantly having with yourself, trying to balance the future and now. Because I'll tell you this, the head coach, the coordinators, your star players, all they care about is the next couple months. They don't give a shit about the draft. There's not, most of these coaches haven't watched a snap of college football. Not a snap. Because on Saturday mornings, they're either traveling with the team, and you're just not really watching much, right? You're traveling, you're in an airplane, you get down, you have some meetings, you eat, you go to bed. And if you're at home, you do some walkthroughs in the morning, you go home, you spend time with your family because you haven't seen them literally all week. So they got no clue. They don't know Ty Simpson from Bart Simpson. But your front office does. And that's where their influence and their juice can help these guys. Like, hey, this is a loaded class at wide receiver. And if this administration, we're not going anywhere, I think we can hold off on that. And that's where you have to have a good communication and a good rapport with the guy you work with, because sometimes you got to talk them off the ledge. Like, I really need this guy. It's like, I don't know if that's the best idea. I don't know if that's the best idea. And you never know. I mean, that's part of, doing deals is some work out and some are just a major flop and absolutely disastrous when you factor in compensation, production, everything combined. But I think we're really going to see in the next, 12 hours, at least from recording this, it's 10:15 at night, who thinks they're really good. And I think a lot of teams will get cold feet because it's so wide open right now.